Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson and welcome back to the Steven Universe Retrospectives, and today we're going to be discussing episodes 101 and 102 of Steven Universe / the final episodes of Season 3, Back to the Moon and Bubbled. Now, when we last left Steven and co., well, they had confronted Jasper. More specifically, Steven, Amethyst, and Peridot confronted Jasper. The trio managed to corner Jasper in the Beta kindergarten, and ultimately it led to them all having a battle with them, which ultimately almost did not go in their favor. But thankfully the tide was turned when Steven and Amethyst, both having a big character moment that united them over the fact that they both felt like the worst gems, finally managed to fuse into a new fusion called Smoky Quartz, who managed to kick Jasper's ass to hell and back, and eventually force Jasper into resorting to fusing with a corrupted gem. Who, yeah, she had been capturing corrupted gems to try and make an army. Ultimately, this did not work in Jasper's favor, as the fusion wound up eventually undoing itself when Smokey continued turning the tide of battle in her favor, and ultimately it results in the corrupted gem running away. But in the process, Jasper wound up getting corrupted too. Steven, seeing this, did attempt to help Jasper, but Jasper, being Jasper, just shunned him away and pretty much told him to F off. And when Steven continued saying, "I want to help you," and he kept trying to reassure her, she was just aghast at this and even said, why would you want to help me after everything you did? What you did in my home, my planet, my home, my colony, my diamond?" To which Steven responds with, "What, yellow diamond?" And Jasper dropped a nugget of information. No, apparently Rose did something to her original diamond. Pink diamond. But before she could elaborate further, the corruption fully took hold and she turned into a monster. And thankfully, Peridot was able to land the killing blow using a metal pipe. Ultimately, there's no information they can get out of Jasper now. She is corrupted and poofed. So Amethyst finally just bubbles her and sends her back to the temple. As such, the trio, now reveling in their newfound victory, end up warping back to the barn with the intent of just taking a long rest and just kind of soaking in their victory. But last episode ended as when Steven, Amethyst, and Peridot returned to the barn, they found Pearl, Garnet, and Lapis there already, as well as the rubies from the Hit the Diamond episode, which is where Back to the Moon starts up. Yeah, it turns out that the rubies actually had returned rather recently, and basically they were just throwing a fuss, which is why Lapis has them trapped in water bubbles, because, well, she thought they were just being a little too rowdy, so she put them on timeout. As such, Steven mainly wants to know why the heck they're back. He thought that they got rid of them. So the gems decide that they need to question them, with Steven asking if he can pick, which is also where we learn that Steven has given each of the rubies nicknames based on the locations of their individual gems, which honestly I'm okay with, because it'd be kind of a hassle to call all of them Ruby. It would be like if you had multiple pearls. It's part of the reason why the diamonds pearls each have nicknames, because if we called them all Pearl, eventually it would get confusing. But point is, the nicknames he gave for each of them are Leggy, because one has hers gem on the side of her leg, Army, side of the arm, Navy, their navel, Eyeball, because one has the gem in their eye, and the last one, whose gem is in her chest, is called Doc. Which I'm guessing, I think, yeah, that's a good idea. You don't want to call, you probably shouldn't call a gem chesty. That's just stupid. I'm sorry, I'm laughing at my own immaturity. But pretty much, Steven ends up asking each of the rubies one by one why they came back, and none of them provide answers, either being clueless, bashful, or just unwilling to comply, until ultimately all that's left is Doc, who, when Steven asks her to come out, she reveals that they're back for Jasper. It turns out that when Steven told the rubies to go search Neptune for Jasper, they did. They went straight to Neptune. They looked all over Neptune. They found nothing. And quite frankly, they're pissed. So they know that Jasper is somewhere on this planet, and they are not going to rest until they find her. And so, which results in the rubies getting into battle formation and saying that they won't be tricked again, and they don't want to know where Jasper is, which, yeah, considering that Jasper has just been poofed, it might be, they're not exactly in a position to tell them where she is. However, Amethyst thinks she has a solution for this, as outside of everyone's view, she shapeshifts into Jasper and tries to put on an act to convince the rubies that she's fine. It's all good. And yeah, well, the gems don't think they're going to believe it, especially since a whole thing with fusion is that while you can take on the shape of another being, your hue stays the same. So despite looking like Jasper, Amethyst is still purple. The rubies fall for it, hook, line, and sinker. With Amethyst even saying that the new hue is because she got a tan from the sun, which the rubies fall for it. I love the reactions the crystal gems have when they realize the rubies are falling for this. It's just like, really? Like they all just react with abject stupor, like Pearl face palms. Paradox just acts like just is like shocked, and Lapis just looks like that she's just died inside. It's great, and I love it. But yeah, pretty much, Amethyst tries to use the fact that they fell for this to her advantage by saying, "Look, I don't want to. I'm not." Saying, look, I'm actually going to stay here on Earth because I've captured these gems and I need to make sure that they don't run away, which the rubies are okay, which the rubies buy, but the thing is, they got procedures for stuff like this, and so if Jasper really wants to stay on Earth, they gotta file a report to the nearest diamond base, which all the rubies are clueless as to where it is, until Eyeball Ruby says that the base is on the moon. Yep, it's the diamond base is the moon base. So unfortunately, the gems kind of have to go there because Jasper has to go with them, and well, they're still operating under the cover story that crystal gems are her prisoners. The only thing is, well, Amethyst can't keep up the form forever. As we've seen in previous episodes, while gems can shapeshift for a time, that's not their natural shape. And if they continue trying to keep the shape-shifting going, eventually they're gonna fall. Eventually they're gonna fall flat in their faces. And sadly, keeping it going will cause strain on the gem. We saw that with what we saw with Steven when he tried stretching himself out to look older. And so Amethyst having to keep this form up for so long is just gonna hurt her in the long run. So as such, she continues while she does keep rolling with it for the sake of the mission. It's clear that strain is already being put on her, so you can start seeing sweat drops form. But either way, Amethyst grabs Garnet, Pearl, and Steven and ushers them on board the Ruby ship, with the rubies going in first. Which another funny thing, she offers Lapis and Peridot if they want to join, and neither are willing to participate. So it's just the core crystal gems for this one. And we also find out another interesting tidbit about the Ruby ship. It's the TARDIS. Oh, okay, not to that degree, but it is bigger on the inside. It's essentially a hammer space. While the ship itself is only so big, the inside is a lot more roomy and is essentially a whole ship, with each of the rubies having their own individual stations. Man, pretty much, and so nobody's crowded in, everything's good, and so while the rubies are still fawning over Amethyst as they still think she's the great hero Jasper and all that crap, they do manage to successfully get to the moon, although it does lead to some funny moments where Doc, in a bit of hero worship, wants Amethyst to sit in the captain's chair, asks to sit on her, and Amethyst says she can sit on her lap. Eyeball Ruby is just looking at it and has a tear of admiration going down her cheek. It's stupid, but kind of adorable at the same time, and I love it. But either way, yeah, they managed to bring the ship to the moon base, and upon arriving, the rubies are kind of in awe about the whole place, as like with Peridot when the crystal gems had to come here, they see this as a relic of a bygone era, as this is supposed to be an Era 1 moon base, and as we saw when we last went there, the opening room holds murals for each of the diamonds, but of special mention this time around is Pink Diamond, which, yeah, turns out that there is a bit of tragedy behind that, as we will soon learn, because the rubies, well, they talk about how it was tragic what happened to Pink Diamond, especially since Earth was her colony. Which, yeah, again, it's another bit of information that we learn. And basically, while one of the rubies, the rookie one, who I think is Leggy, but don't quote me on that. No, I think that was, or maybe it was Navy. No, Army. I keep forgetting. Okay, it's hard. The one that was clearly the rookie on the group. She has no idea what the hell they're talking about. Who's Pink Diamond? And Eyeball, well, she gets outraged at this, especially since she is apparently a veteran of the Gem War, and apparently she bore witness to what happened that day. As such, while she does implore Amethyst to share the story because she still thinks she's Jasper, Amethyst is clueless, so she asks Eyeball to recount it. And so Eyeball, again, in hero worship, decides to do Jasper this favor, and it's here we learn more details about the rebellion all those thousands of years ago. Basically, it starts at the eyeball starts a story the way you expect. Basically, a colony was set up on Earth, and at the beginning, it was like any other colony, and it was doing well. They were sprouting quartz soldiers, more gems. They were expanding their empire. Everything was all going good until Rose Quartz started the rebellion. Basically, they were causing disruption, causing turmoil. But it's here we learn another detail about the war, and we soon learn how the crystal gems secured their victory. Because according to Eyeball Ruby, as she apparently saw it herself, Rose Quartz took things too far and shattered Pink Diamond. Something that causes Steven to start freezing up. And when he looks to Garnet and Pearl for any confirmation, it's clear they're silently wincing. Well, Garnet is. Pearl, she looks shaken as she looks like she's going to cry as her hands cover her mouth. As such, Steven vehemently Steven vehemently says that this could be, just yells that's wrong, that Rose wouldn't shatter anyone. She had to fight to do what was right, but she's not a shatterer. She wouldn't shatter anyone, right? But no one has an answer. Excuse me a sec. Sorry about that coughing fit and dog stuff. But either way, yeah, after Steven vehemently denies that his mother would do something like that, well, that's when the rubies reveal a problem, as when they get to the top floor of the moon base, well, they find the broken terminal, because if you remember the last time the crystal gems went there, well, they kind of broke it, or more specifically, Garnet broke it in a fit of rage, because, Peridot said that Rose Quartz was kind of an idiot. Which, as such, yeah, they can't really file a report from here, and because Peridot took the communicator, I'm sorry, I'm still adjusting the camera, because Peridot took the communicator that was directly aligned to the diamonds, they have no means of communicating with Homeworld. As such, they tell them that they gotta bring Jasper straight to Homeworld so she can file this report in person, but Amethyst can't keep up the form for that long, so she tasks Eyeball with submitting the report, because she knows her so well. Of course, Jasper thinks that she can do it for her, which Eyeball is more than happy to do. As such, the rubies end up climbing back onto their ship with the intent of leaving, which, the instant they're out of view, Amethyst just shapeshift back to her normal form because she needs to take a breath. Again, excuse me, dog stuff. Again, apologies. But anyway, as I was saying, what was I talking about? Oh, yes. The instant the rubies get on their ship, Amethyst takes a breath and starts and shapeshift back into her regular form. But, well, she should have kind of done it somewhere else. Because, well, after all, the crystal gems don't really have any other place to go, as the ship was how they got to the moon base. And so Doc ends up peeking back out of the ship and asks, hey, do you want to ride back to Earth? But when she looks out and sees the crystal gems with Jasper gone and the Amethyst that was pretending to be a human last time suddenly standing there, who, upon seeing Doc, just screams, I'm still Jasper! Immediately the rubies realize they've been tricked again, and, well, they go back on the offensive as they all jump out of the ship and fuse back into their giant form. As such, their intent is to go right for the attack and they go right for the attack and once again ask where Jasper is. But thankfully, in the midst of the distraction, Steven actually got a bit of a one-up as he ran over to the airlock doors of the moon base and very much tells the rubies that they need to take it outside as he opens the door and the vacuum of space begins sucking them out. Of course, the giant ruby tries holding on, saying that telling Steven, what, you really thought that I would just let you throw me out into space? At which point more light fills the room, and we see that Garnet and Pearl have fused into Sardonyx, and even Steven admits, I don't think I can do anything about it, but I think she can. At which point Sardonyx gets her hammer ready, goes for a wind-up, and then punts the giant ruby fusion right in the chest, causing all the rubies to unfuse and fly out into space. Unfortunately, though, Eyeball managed to grab a hold of Steven, and in the midst of it, he ends up losing his balance and goes flying out into space with them, which is where that episode ends. And Bubbled actually begins, as thankfully Steven doesn't die from suffocating in space, as on pure instinct he actually managed to put up a bubble. And so, because I guess he can create his own oxygen supply in there, I don't know, I'm just going to say magic. Basically, he's fine. So, while it's clear that he's still somewhat disoriented, ultimately, he's unharmed, but unfortunately, he's still in a bubble hurtling through the vacuum of space, and, well, he has no real control over where he's going, as he's just flying all over the place, and only stops when when his bubble finally hits something. Specifically, Eyeball, which, again, another little detail I like is that the instant Eyeball ends up smacking into the bubble, as we saw with the gems when they went to the moon base, her body immediately adjusts to the bubble's gravity, so she starts walking along the bubble as if she were walking on Earth. So basically, she's just fine. But point is, yeah, Eyeball's angry that that pretty much all of her team's mission was a waste. That they haven't found Jasper, she has no way of getting back to Earth, her whole team has been jettisoned into space, and she pretty much just blames Steven and the Crystal Gems. Steven, of course, defends themselves, saying, hey, you're the ones that attacked us first, but Eyeball says, yeah, well, you're the one that jettisoned us into space. Which, yeah, Steven takes the blame for that and even apologizes, but it's clear Eyeball has no love lost for this kid and is just treating him like shit, which even Steven responds angrily to, and even says, "Fine, if you don't want to get along, then we can just stay floating out in the middle. Then we can just stay out floating out here in silence till we both die." Which Eyeball Ruby is totally fine with, but pretty much they just end up floating through space with no one but each other to keep company, and well, it's still pretty turbulent, as pretty much any time either of them say anything, it leads to a snippy response. When Steven tries using his cell phone, and which, funny thing, he complains he doesn't have service even though they drift right by a satellite dish, Eyeball just yells at him about how, because he says, if I ever get back home, I'm changing my company, and she says, oh, and yeah, she just keeps yelling at him. But Eyeball actually starts talking about, well, why she even came to Earth at all. As I said, she is a veteran from the Gem War, and well, like Jasper, she didn't really want to come back to Earth. But also like Jasper, part of the reason she came back was because she heard that there were still crystal gems on Earth, especially rose quartz, which even she knew, part of the reason she even came here, that she went on a mission, was because she also wanted to meet Jasper, and, well, like Jasper, she wanted closure. Because, after all, why would someone like Jasper want to go back to Earth? After all, Jasper even admitted that she was fighting to break away from Earth from the instant she was born. And yet, she willingly went back for Peridot's stupid little mission. Which even, like I said, Eyeball Ruby thinks that the only reason she did that was because she just wanted to get closure. That she wanted to see Rose Quartz, and even Eyeball laments that she never got the chance to see Rose Quartz at all. As such, when Steven realizes that Eyeball just wanted to see Rose, well, he tells her that this might just be her lucky day, as he tries telling her that Rose Quartz turned into him, which Eyeball finds to be stupid. As such, Steven does try giving proof that he is in fact Rose, as he showcases off his gem, which, through the filter of the bubble, Eyeball thinks doesn't look like a rose quartz gem. He tries summoning a shield, but, well, Eyeball recognized Rose through her sword, which Steven doesn't have, and even when he tries showcasing a picture of his mom and against himself to try and showcase the resemblance, Eyeball just thinks that Steven's messing with her, and thinks that he's full, and ultimately just thinks he's full of it and making fun of her. However, they don't really have a lot of time to lament on this, as their bubble continues flying along. They end up in the middle of an asteroid field, and while Steven thinks that maybe that he can be unharmed by this, well, Eyeball's on the outside of the bubble, which means that she's directly in the path of any debris that they fly into. So she has to, unfortunately, dodge out of the way of things. And while she does a pretty good job getting around these things, which results in the pair just bouncing all over the place, it's actually a pretty nice little slapstick. Ultimately, when they do get through, sadly, their efforts don't bear fruit, as after they seem to get through it, one stray meteor rock manages to smack Eyeball in the face, specifically right in her gem, which almost throws her off of the bubble, but Steven manages to extend the bubble enough to reach out and pull her in. As such, she is saved from flying through the vacuum of space alone, but unfortunately her gem is now cracked, and like with Amethyst, she starts suffering defects in her physical form because of it, shrinking, feeling genuinely ill, and so on and so forth. And Steven, Well, he says, but Steven, being Steven, wants to help her. And while she at first denies wanting any help from him, well, even she realizes, well, what does she have to lose? And so she decides to let him do it, resulting in Steven licking her eye, which does get her to freak the hell out because, well, who wouldn't? But it does bear fruit as Steven's saliva manages to heal her gem and she's good as new. Which, yeah, this finally convinces Eyeball that Steven is Rose, as there were tales of Rose being able to heal her soldiers, which is why she was able to keep putting up a good fight despite her smaller numbers. As such, Eyeball is actually kind of starts laughing at this because she thinks, "Wow, I actually am here with Rose Quartz." And Steven at first is laughing with her, until her voice gets a little darker when she says the legendary Rose Quartz. At which point, Eyeballs actually pulls her weapon out of her gem. In this case, a dagger. And the reason she's pulled it out? She plans to stab Steven right through with it. Which, yeah, causes Steven to freak out, and while Steven tries to defend himself, like, "Wait, I just healed you." Yeah, she's not listening. At this point, she just sees Steven as basically, I want the gem equivalent of a big payday, because Rose Quartz is a big name criminal on the gem homeworld, and as we saw with Jasper, every gem wants to get any gem that's loyal to the cause wants to see her shattered. So immediately, Eyeball wants to go after Steven, which results in some minor funny slapstick as Steven and Eyeball just start running around the bubble. But ultimately, the chase ends with Eyeball accidentally tackling into Steven and pinning him down while she holds her dagger up. And while Steven does try arguing with her, saying, "No, don't do this. Think about it. We're in the middle of space. If we're in the middle of space, if you kill me, this bubble will pop, and you'll just be floating out in the middle of space. How will you stop this?" But Eyeball is too blinded by visions of glory to even think about that. Even saying that she's already made up her mind and fully intends to kill Steven. As such, Steven, realizing he has no other options, grabs Eyeball and holds it, takes a deep breath, and dispels the bubble through hurling Eyeball out and chucking her right into space before putting the bubble back up. Which, yeah, it's clear that even doing that took a lot out of Steven, both physically and emotionally, as he just curls up into a ball, and the bubble starts to shrink until really there is no room for it. It just completely surrounds him with no room. As such, with Eyeball gone, Steven continues floating through space alone, but thankfully that doesn't last very long either, as we see the Ruby spaceship appear and pull him in, and sure enough, it ain't the Rubies piloting it, it's the Crystal Gems, who, the instant they see Steven, they're all just teary-eyed. There's no sound effects or dialogue during this section. Really, the only thing that we hear is the song "Love Like You," which is normally played over the credits of every episode of Steven Universe, but here it's a nice little sweet piece that plays over just this with the Crystal Gems reuniting with Steven, and pretty much all of them are just happy crying as they're all back together, which it's sweet, heartfelt, and really gets you right here. As such, with Steven safe, the gems begin taking the ship back to Earth, but as they're going back, Steven does finally ask, "Did my mom really shatter Pink Diamond?" And Garnet confirms the story. That, yeah, while it may not have been a nice thing, Earth was Pink Diamond's colony, and if they wanted it, and if they wanted the Earth to be free, if they wanted to liberate it from the Gem homeworld, if they even wanted to exist as they are at all, then sadly, Pink Diamond had to go. It wasn't a nice thing, but it had to be done. And when Steven hears this, it does shake him, but he does thank Garnet for telling him. So, that's where, unless the episode ends with the ship flying back to, and thus the episode ends as we see the ship getting closer to Earth. So, all right, like with last week, because of these episodes are so intrinsically tied together, I am gonna treat them as if they're one whole episode, because the plot of one leads directly into the plot of the other, and while I can definitely link different story elements to one episode over the other, they both kind of have one big thing in common: the reveal of what happened to Pink Diamond. Last week we got a small little hint with Jasper as she yelled at Steven for what his mom did to Pink, but we never really got any confirmation. But we never really got more details about that. Just that Rose did something to Pink. We don't know what, but it was something. But this pair of episodes finally reveal what that is, and quite frankly, yeah, it's a very shocking, to say the least. In a way, it kind of makes sense. And I think works as a good character point, as a good turning point for both the show and Steven as a character. Because again, as we've seen with Steven Universe the show, little by little, we've been seeing the light facade kind of being stripped away. But again, when we started the show, the conflict that we saw in the first episode was Steven worrying about summoning his shield and about how his favorite ice cream had been taken off the market. And throughout the first half of the first season, Steven thought that the Crystal Gems mission was just saving lives, protecting people, like being superheroes and all that stuff. But then he learned that there was a darker layer underneath when he learned that all the monsters they were facing used to be gems, and that the crystal gems technically are fighting their own kind, especially when they end up going up against Lapis. And then likewise, at the end of Season 1, Steven learned that they were actually rebels in a war, and that a lot of the other gems out in the galaxy are a lot more hostile than they thought. And then we get to the second season with Peridot, when we meet Yellow Diamond and everything with the cluster. But this season finally peels back, but this season begins peeling back even more. As we saw, the thing is, the last two seasons have been showcasing a little bit more of Rose Quartz as a character. Again, only in little bits, because the only times we ever see her character are via flashbacks or some kind of proxy to a flashback, like with the video that Rose left for Steven. But ultimately, what we have seen of her is that the person does not match up to the legend. The legend of Rose Quartz has her be this demure, perfect figure that everyone looked up to, who always knew what to do, who kept secrets, but ultimately for the greater good. And yet the Rose that we see is kind of a goofball, who's curious about everything, doesn't always understand everything, but is so excited to learn more, and who definitely is kind and courageous, and ultimately there are aspects that you can see would fit into becoming a legend, like when she talks about how she admires humans for how they have the ability to change and grow up. But ultimately she's a bit more childish, a bit more out there, definitely living in the uncanny valley for part of her existence. But then you get to the Bismuth episode, which I'll talk about this later because part of this twist does kind of involve something like that. But with Bismuth, you start seeing a dark side with Rose, because one of the secrets that she kept was that she took one of her soldiers who was advocating for shattering the gems of their enemies, and hid her away, bubbled her, hid her in her lion, and then just told everyone, "Oh, I lost her. I don't know what happened to her." When I even more thought about that even more, part of the reason she did that was because she wanted to essentially hide this away, and the thing is, part of the reason she even kept it secret is essentially she didn't want any of the other gems to go along with this, because yeah, there's a good chance other gems might agree with Bismuth in that regard, because, let's be honest, when you're dealing with a war, sacrifices sometimes will be made. It doesn't mean you like it, but it's something that will come up. And yes, while we do want to take the moral high ground at times, we do want to do the right thing, and that's part of the reason why I love superheroes, because the whole idea behind superheroes and being a hero in general is that there is always a better way, that you don't have to resort to using the darker methods. You don't always have to kill someone, that there's always hope that you can turn them around, make them good. There's always a chance for them to be better. But sometimes it's you or them. It may not be a choice that will always happen, and it's a choice you will want to avoid as much as you can, but there will be times when the choice sadly is taken away from you. That all other options have been expended, and you finally have to realize either this person dies or everybody else dies or I die. Essentially, just it's an impossible choice, but one that ultimately has to be made. And likewise, with the reveal that Rose shattered Pink Diamond, it creates a sense of tragedy, because ultimately this showcases that despite Rose's posturing about everyone's better nature, that there's always value in life and doing the right thing and protecting others, she took a life, a big life, the life of the leader of the enemy, but ultimately still a life. And it's one, and the instant Steven hears it, it shakes him right to his core, made worse by the fact that the other gems knew about this. Maybe not Amethyst, because she was born after the gem war was over, but still, something that this is something big, something integral, something that he thought that the crystal gems would share with him, but they didn't. They kept it from him. And it's scary, and it gets to him like you would not believe. When he realizes that they've been hiding such a big thing from him, he doesn't know how to register it. He doesn't know how to take it in. And likewise, he has and he does have trouble kind of accepting it. Even by the end of the episode, when he asks Garnet if what they say is true and why they didn't tell him, it's again one of those things that they just don't have a straight answer for. But ultimately, it was something that they felt had to be done, because Earth was Pink Diamond's colony, and ultimately, if they wanted Earth to be freed, sadly, Pink Diamond had to go. Which, yeah, it's tragic. It's bad, but it was one of those things that, whether anybody liked it or not, had to be done. Or at the very least, maybe not. Let's talk about something. Remember how I talked about how the white noise that all the remaining gems on Earth saw caused them all to become altered? I'm just going to tell you this right now. As I mentioned, that was caused by the diamonds. That was there, and I mentioned how that was in response to something Rose did. Well, the thing is, what Rose did was shatter Pink Diamond. And, well, imagine this. So the diamonds are essentially like their own little close-knit family. They treat each other like siblings or parents or so forth. And now they just saw one of their own be shattered by the leader of the enemy. How would you react? Yeah, the diamonds tried to raise the surface of Earth, but as we saw with the gems, how Garner described corruption, it's not like the gems are it's like they've broken the fabric of their minds. Now again, let's go back to Jasper. While the corruption was started from her fusion with a corrupted gem, the more her the more her anger, sadness, and despair grew, the faster the corruption spread. Now imagine this with me. Imagine that you're a diamond. You are one of the most powerful beings in the Gem Empire. You are one of four, a quadruplet of power that controls the ins and outs of the entire empire. And you just saw one of your own be destroyed. Someone that you cared about, someone that you held close. How would that make you feel? What emotions would run through your head? Anger, sadness, depression, betrayal, fury. A lot. It's a lot, and all of those emotions are not good. And as I mentioned, the Diamond's attack on Earth, with the final attack, the big white noise, that was in response to Rose shattering Pink Diamond. And again, as we saw with Centipedal, when she recalled that event, she broke down in tears. And that's why I think that final attack, where the diamonds projecting their raw emotions and despair and fury right onto the gems. They may not have wanted to do that, because we learn later that was not their intent. They were trying to genuinely destroy all the gems, but ultimately, with their final attack resulted in them transferring everything that they were feeling onto the assorted gems of Earth. And that combined despair and anguish and anger and everything, and combined with the traumas of all the traumas of the war, it broke the minds of every gem on the surface, resulting in them becoming corrupted. I think, which, again, I find that's honest, that's very, it's twisted, sad, but twisted. And to see see that level of despair transform all these gems into literal monsters, it's sad. It's sad. Tragic, even. Excuse me one sec, I feel a coughing fit coming on. Okay, sorry, I think I took care of it. But anyway, with that being said, though, that also makes the fun. I think what makes this episode better is that it does kind of set the whole thing. It kind of really hits it home with Steven. Because, again, Steven is a good kid. He wants to do the right thing no matter what. He doesn't want to hurt people. He doesn't want to be a monster. He doesn't want to kill to get his end goal. As we've seen in previous episodes, how he wants to end the battle is by offering a hand of friendship. And we've seen him do that at any opportunity. Any chance that he can get to offer assistance even to an enemy, he will take it. And if he can end the battle by turning that enemy into a friend, he will. We've seen that many times throughout the show. When Lapis stole Earth's ocean, he went right up to her and offered to repair her gems so she could leave. When the crystal gems had Peridot, he was the only one that was willing to listen, and through that friendship, he was able to get her to their side. The crystal gems ultimately beat the cluster not by destroying it, but by making friends with it, or at the very least, with Steven making friends with it. And likewise with Jasper, whilst Jasper ultimately told Steven to screw off, even just before she was fully corrupted, he was offering a hand of friendship. He wanted to help her. He wanted to fix her, but ultimately, sorry, I hear a dog barking. Again, dogs. So yeah, dog stuff. But anyway, yeah. But again, like I said, because even though Steven offered Jasper a hand of friendship, she told him to screw off, and again, that kind of showcases more of the situation that Steven finally finds himself in. That not everybody wants to be saved. And we see that with Eyeball Ruby. Despite Steven essentially being her lifeline and doing everything in his power to keep her safe, to look out for her, and even healing her gem, she does not want his assistance. She sees him as the enemy, and the instant that she learns that he's technically Rose Quartz, the leader of the Crystal Gems, she wants his head on a pike for what Rose did. That she wants him dead, and no matter how much Steven tries reasoning with her or tries to talk her down, she's not coming back. And as a result, Steven is forced to make a decision, his life or hers. And again, when he does make the decision, he chucks her right out into space. It shakes him. It kind of hurts him. Like, it's okay. You can argue maybe he was physically hurt because, well, even just for a few seconds he was back in the vacuum of space without protection. But again, we learn later that what he did with Eyeball. It shakes him. It hurts him. And again, kind of feeds back into the issues that Steven is dealing with. As before, he was living in this idealized shadow of a person that he thought was the big leader of the Crystal Gems. Now he's learning that not only was she not perfect, but that she may not even be a great leader because she may have killed her in order to win the war, she had to kill someone, something that she apparently bubbled another gem just for thinking about doing, just for creating a weapon to do. Which, yeah, that's another thing about the twist with Pink Diamond. This also brings up something that I like. It brings up a contradiction, using Ace Attorney terms here. Rose Quartz, when presented with the idea of shattering any of the gems in the enemy army, especially the diamonds, which Bismuth did advocate for, she said, no, we can't do this, no gems deserve this. And it was because Bismuth disagreed with her so adamantly that Rose bubbled her, hid her away, and then lied. And yet, when push came to shove, Rose still shattered Pink Diamond. Now, on the outskirts of this can be interpreted as one of two ways. Either one, Rose is a hypocrite and decided to do it anyway, or B, she was presented with no other options and realized this is the only way to save everyone. But again, even that still feels weird, because she was so adamant about it that she hid one of her own soldiers away for even wanting to do it. So why did she still go through with it? Why did she... What made her finally decide, I need to shatter this gem, even though earlier she was advocating that no gem deserved this? Food for thought, huh? Again, you can still interpret this as, well, they had no other option, because Pink Diamond was the one who ruled Earth, and she had to go if the Crystal Gems wanted to make Earth a free colony. But it's the first little inconsistency with the story, and ultimately, if Ace Attorney has taught me anything, all it takes is one little crack, and you can eventually break them, and you can eventually break the mold. It's something to think about. Otherwise, though, when it comes to both individual episodes, I do think that when it comes to the twist with Rose Quartz and Pink Diamond, well, the first twist, again, you know what the second twist is, it still feels like it feels very strong and offers some great character stuff for both the show and Steven. For Steven, this finally starts kind of showcasing him more of the dark reality of what the Crystal Gems are doing, what his mother was doing, what they're all going through, and what they had to do in order to secure the victory. And that, yeah, sometimes that ultimately they had to do things that none of them really wanted to do. Again, hold on a second. Again, dog stuff. But yeah, ultimately they had to do things they didn't want to do, but it was all for the greater good. That they had to do it for the sake of freeing Earth. And again, we see Steven even presented with a similar situation with Eyeball Ruby as she tried to kill him, and his only options were either let her do it or throw her into space. So, and it's again great character stuff, and the way it shakes up Steven and the way you can see how it affects him. It's great stuff. It's amazing stuff, and ultimately make Steven realize just how heavy everything really is. Add on some honestly, legitimately funny antics in the first episode with Amethyst pretending to be Jasper, the Ruby's utter stupidity, and I love the reactions that the Crystal Gems have to Amethyst when she's pretending to be Jasper. Like Peridot and Lapis just look at this and think, I can't believe this is working. And then when the gems are when Garnet, Steven, and Pearl are brought on board the Ruby's ship, they all just do really bad performances pretending that they've all been captured, with Pearl just going over the top to the point where Amethyst has to just tell her to rein it in. Because one Ruby just wants to chuck her into space. It's actually pretty funny. And even the second episode, when Steven and Eyeball have to kind of sort of cohabitate with each other, it does lead to some nice stuff. And again, I do kind of like the kind of slapstick antics when they're going through the asteroid field. And again, the final shot of the episode with the gems holding Steven once they find him in space and crying with Love Like You playing over it. It's sweet, nice, but ultimately leaves kind of a slight bitter taste in your mouth when you learn more about the dark reality about what Steven has learned. So, yeah, on the whole, both are really damn good episodes, and I think these are great ones to end Season 3 on. Ends with a big revelation, big reveal, and ultimately the main character's world just shaken up and not knowing what he's going to do next. So, yeah, on the whole, damn good episodes, great way to end the season. So, yeah, that's about it. I hope you enjoyed the vlog. Thank you for watching. I'm Samuel Johnson, and I will see you next week as we start up Season 4. So, till then, hope you have a good night, and take care.